Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. How the hell do these Reds keep doing it? I have no idea, but we're here for every single second of it, aren't we? We're here to review yesterday's 95th minute winner. We're here to look at the off-the-field news and just a small matter of the Champions League coming up in a few days' time. I'm your host, Dave Davis, coming to you from a glorious Edinburgh. Fingers crossed it stays that way. And I'm joined, of course, by the renowned and the respected David Lynch, who, David, you were actually at Turf Moor yesterday. I know you were. And before we get into the game, I've got to ask you this. A moment for that training kit and that match kit. We don't normally talk kits, but just how good are they?
Yeah, it is so smart, isn't it? I just absolutely love that colour and everything that's kind of in that colourway. I mean, I saw the players walking in off the coach. They come down by the stands and very near the press room, so came out to see if Isak was there, essentially. And they saw them in a full trackie. That is some piece of kit, that, isn't it? Unbelievable. And then, you know, the green shorts, which we won't be seeing very often, but really loved that whole look. So, yeah, they look very smart, and of course, it's always happier, and they always look a little bit smarter as well when they win. So, very nice.
Yeah, I think they were about to be quite disrespectful to the kit itself, but everything ends well ultimately. And Christ, I don't really know where we're going to start on this. I mean, the headline says there, and it's a cracking photo. Salah scores 95th minute winner as Liverpool beat Burnley at Turf Moor. Maybe sort of try if we break it down half by half. I mean, the first half, we didn't move it quick enough. There wasn't much happening. Players had to get taken off. Is that a fair summary of the first half?
Yeah, it just never really kind of looked like scoring in that first half. Just wasn't enough urgency. And you just kind of thinking, and this was a thing last season, wasn't it? Kind of wasting the first 45 minutes of games. And this didn't feel like one where Liverpool needed to do that, because they didn't kind of need to run Burnley down or you know, kind of take control and see where the spaces were. It was very obvious from the get-go, really, that it was kind of going to be a 5-4-1, and it was going to be bodies all over the box and just trying to find that little gap or that little moment to shoot. So, they did kind of waste 45 minutes there, which is, a bit of a frustrating habit. But of course, they do keep winning, by the way. So I'm loath to be too critical of basically anything at the moment. But, and that was the case last season, that they kept winning despite kind of wasting the first half. So maybe there's something in that. But it wasn't a surprise that they came in at 0-0, really, when you watch the pattern of the game in that first half. And a couple of frustrating moments, and obviously decisive with the substitutions and things. But bit of a strange one, really, and just not a good start to the game that kind of filled you with any hope, to be honest.
No, and second half, Arne Slot was famous for his changes and the way it turned around. And we should say from the second half that Conor Bradley comes on. The urgency was there. You could see it straight away. They picked up the tempo, but it seemed to be a tactic where almost was it get the ball into the box as quickly as possible, wasn't it? Play with a real pace. That was the clear message from the second half.
Yeah, and it's just kind of maddening, isn't it? That why is that not the message from the first half? Because it's so obvious, so obvious how the game's going to go. You know, I know, Scott Parker's done that before with Liverpool. I know he got thrashed as Bournemouth manager 9-0, but there's been a lot of games where he's managed to make it tricky for Liverpool in the past with that kind of tactic. So I'm not sure why they were kind of surprised by it. But yeah, as you say, gets him in at half time, tells him to speed it up a little bit. He's made two smart subs in the fullbacks. Obviously, the Kirkes coming off for Robbo, I think, was the right call. And I thought Bradley as well injected a bit of something down that right-hand side. And to be honest, I would have probably started Szoboszlai in midfield anyway, because I think McAllister, after international breaks, to me, it's an obvious kind of call to maybe leave him out there. And, it doesn't seem like he's got kind of, that ankle is hurt, but it doesn't seem like he's injured and it's going to be anything long-term. So I think that decision was taken on the basis of, just to kind of, McAllister just wasn't playing that well. So, I think that decision really should have been made from the start. But as you say, I think every change he made there kind of started to speed things up. They started to play a bit more, get into spaces, and they weren't reeling off a load of shots on target, unfortunately. But it was getting better and better. And then, it started to get to the point where you felt like Liverpool were really turning the screw, and then that hope fades because the minutes keep ticking away and you're ending up into injury time and it's only 5 minutes, maybe should have been more. And you start to kind of feel a bit like, even though he's made positive changes and the right ones, that Liverpool have left themselves with too little time to sort it out. Yeah. That proved not to be the case.
Yeah, thank God. It just does seem to be the habit. So maybe we've just got to get used to how this is going to work. And I suppose you'll have seen the different coverage from different places. The infuriation people will have from Sky, Mika Richards, Jamie Carragher, the way they were saying, Burnley was so unlucky and this. I mean, I'm not saying Burnley didn't try. I think they made it over, double figures in last-ditch blocks, didn't they, as the stats said. But I think they didn't have a touch in Alisson's box in the second half. They had 19% possession. Isn't it hard to say that they were robbed as people want to go for this narrative?
Yeah, they definitely weren't robbed. I would never, if anyone's saying that, it's kind of ridiculous, really. I mean, if you give up 27 shots and you don't have a touch in the opposition box in the second half, and you just, they don't generate a single shot on target across the 90 minutes, 0.13 expected goals. So they were well and truly kind of battered across the 90 minutes. But where I do feel some sympathy for Burnley is that you've done so well defending your box for 95 minutes, to restrict Liverpool, prior to the Salah penalty, Liverpool have had 3 shots on target. That was it. And none where you thought the save was absolutely out of this world either. So, to restrict a Liverpool side with that much quality in it to that few shots that takes some doing, because Liverpool have scored in 38 consecutive Premier League games now, and that was the 38th yesterday. And you think, so for Burnley to restrict them to so few good chances, right. I thought it was an unbelievable effort. And I've had I see kind of criticism in the replies where I said, they were a bit unfortunate. So I don't think, they were robbed by any means to not win the game. And clearly, if they'd have won, it would have. How would that even have happened? They didn't even try to get shots, and they couldn't get shots, and they were really poor in that regard. But you have to say, kind of, as anyone who's watched football for more than, unless you've only been watching it for this is your first season, how is anyone surprised by the approach that Burnley take? Because of the financial differences between these two teams, because of the fact it's Liverpool, the champions, coming to your place. The best chance Burnley had was to sit in the way they did. And you can go, oh, well, it didn't work, did it? So it shows it's rubbish. Well, it did work. It absolutely worked. If Hannibal just keeps his hands by his side, It's an unbelievable defensive performance to earn what would be a very, very important and a very good point. So, I hate that kind of snobbery of kind of, and I think bigger club fans are kind of guilty of this all the time, of saying, well, they got what they deserve for anti-football. Well, I don't think they had much of a choice there, really. And it's like, yes, of course, you would prefer to come up against Vincent Kompany's Burnley, where they open up and you just tear them to shreds because it's a nicer time for you. But you've got to kind of sympathise with the situations other clubs are in and what they've got at their disposal in comparison to Liverpool. They're light years apart, really. And I thought it was a phenomenal defensive effort for them, and fair play to them for that. Let down by a moment of madness at the end, and we're obviously very pleased about that. Yeah. But you give credit to Burnley, it's allowed to do that. Football is about, playing in different ways and coming up against different tactics, and without doubt, even though they lose the game in an unfortunate way, that was the right tactic for Burnley, because outside of that handball, Liverpool just would not have scored, would they? So, fair play to them. I think they deserve a lot of praise, albeit, like I say, I don't think they got robbed by any means. But I also think it's fair to say that they were unlucky as well. And, they deserve great credit for what the performance they put in, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you a fair all-round assessment as Midnight Toker points, their first defeat at home for a year. So people were talking about their defensive solidity. Yeah, 5-5-0, you would expect them to be difficult to break down. But we did in the end. And I suppose you mentioned Alexis McAllister. I don't think he would have started if Curtis Jones, had been available for this one. He struggled a bit. Probably the other big sub was, people made a big deal of this, but I thought it was the right call to take off Kirkez at that time. What did you reckon?
Yeah, I agree. I just think, he's so silly with the yellow card. And then, as the manager says after the match, he gets involved in that tussle with, I think, is it Jaden Anthony or Lyle Foster? I can't really remember. But, a tussle where I think he wins the ball fairly, and yet the crowd's up as if he deserves his second yellow, and he gets a foul against him. I thought the wrong decision, and it just showed in that atmosphere, which, by the way, Burnley fans did create a good atmosphere that made it difficult for Liverpool yesterday. I also want to mention the wind at some point, which was definitely a factor in the game. It makes it hard to play football, but and you can't credit Burnley for that, but it definitely does. So that was definitely a factor yesterday. But yeah, in that atmosphere, it just felt, and Kirk's his head looked a bit chocker after the yellow card. He's 21 years old. He can make silly decisions sometimes. He's not the finished product. I thought a really smart sub, to just go, I'm not even going to wait till half time here. I'm going to make this sub and just calm things down at left back. And I thought Robertson was fantastic yesterday. I think he creates the most chances in the match with 5, and puts that one on Chiesa's head that you'd like to see him do a little better with, and look very calm in kind of any of his defending and his contributions. In fact, he comes on, and I think his first action is he dribbles through and gets a shot off as well. So I thought Robertson was outstanding, and he just needed that experience in that moment and to recognise that Kirk's, it's not going to be his day. Let's not get him a red card. We'll get him off. And, that's why you have a squad, and how lucky Liverpool is to have someone as good as Robertson as the kind of backup in that situation. So very brave from Slot to make it early. And I think he was absolutely kind of vindicated in that decision as the match went on.
Definitely. And even the later subs like Frimpong and Rio and Gamoa, they made a big difference, just that pace. So you've got to give him credit for that. And maybe, and I know you never like to talk about refs, and it should always be about the game, but I'll be honest, we're only, 3 or 4 games into the season, and it's another one I'm struggling with. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, I don't know. When I kind of watched it back, it's one of those. I've seen reds given. If he gets given on the field, there's absolutely no chance. I think what kind of saves him is he trips up off the foot, doesn't it? So he catches him, but then it kind of pushes up onto the ankle rather than the first contact seemed to be with the ankle. So for me, it's right on the border. I mean, I'm absolutely happy if they give a red in that situation, but I can kind of see why they think it's maybe not a clear and obvious error not to, that needs upgrading to a red. Obviously, he gets sent off in the end anyway. So, it would have made things easier for Liverpool if he got sent off then and there. But as I say, I think sometimes you just got to accept that some are on the line and some are going to get given and sometimes they're not. And that, for me, that kind of was in that region of kind of I'm not 100% red, but could have accepted if it was given. So, unfortunate for Liverpool, it didn't. But good news for Burnley, I guess, that it wasn't.
True. And then, he didn't really help himself later on, but he does us a big favour. Unfortunately, in the context of things, it didn't really matter. But what did matter, I thought Ryan Gravenberch was brilliant yesterday. I mean, some of the stats are there on the screen. There was a few others with pass marks. I thought Virgil had a very good game. I thought Ibu Konate had a good game as well. But Gravenberch was class yesterday, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I saw a Burnley fan was kind of praising him after the match as well, and just talking about how good he was and kind of how, not a player that you come to the match thinking is going to blow you away, but he was just that good, wasn't he? I mean, he just won duels in there, won his battles, and then there's some of them unbelievable turns out of pressure and the little flick over the head that everyone's kind of clipped up. You immediately I put my hands on my head when he did it because it was just unbelievable piece of skill, really. And he just seems to be growing and growing, which, we should probably expect because he was very, very good last season, but he's got a year of experience under his belt, full of confidence now, and he knows he's nailed on for that role, and he's just doing an unbelievable job. I mean, you just kind of think of those sliding doors moments of would he have ended up there if Liverpool had signed Zubimendi? Would he have been showing just how good he is? And maybe not, because Liverpool didn't even appreciate what they had at that time, and yet he's just gone from strength to strength. And we're talking about one of the best holding midfielders in Europe now, which, that's been for so long talked about as a problem position for Liverpool. I honestly don't think I would swap him for anyone at the moment. He's just a world-class player, and yesterday completely protected any chances of a counter. He wasn't dribbled past once, and wins his duels, as I say, wins his tackles, and then his use of the ball was just brilliant. I think he creates 4 chances, that's 4 shots himself to keep them on their toes, and yeah, just magnificent player. And like I say, wouldn't swap him for anyone in that role at the moment.
He was brilliant yesterday. And we mentioned VVD. He just almost get used to that brilliance, of course. But thinking about Konate, we're 4 games into the season, and you think of, and we can be honest on this, how bad he was for the first 2 games. That just shows how quickly it can change in football, isn't it? Liverpool have now kept 2 clean sheets in a row, and he's been, if not at his best, close to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is with the Konate, I don't understand the kind of rush at the start of the season to kind of write him off and say he's useless and that Mark Gay's come in to completely knock him out of the team and we'll never see him again. I mean, it stuns me sometimes how quickly people forget. I think Konate is a world-class defender, and I know everyone's upset about his contract situation, but you shouldn't allow that to cloud just how good a player he is. And he did have a slow start to the season. He can have the odd time where he's kind of has a little patchy run of form, but he seems to be in rhythm now. And I thought he was just absolutely magnificent yesterday. I believe Van Dijk got the man of the match from the broadcasters, didn't he? But I think Konate should have been right up there. He wins 14 duels in the match. Obviously, nobody else gets anywhere near that. That's ridiculous. The amount of times that Burnley were trying to get one in behind him or get him under a long ball, and he just gobbled it up, or just showed great composure, shoulder to shoulder with someone. I just think he's brilliant. And like I say, people shouldn't allow the contract thing and the Real Madrid interest to cloud that. Liverpool got a brilliant player on the hands. I'm such a big fan of Konate, and he's back into form now, which is great. And no coincidence that has happened. And Liverpool have kept 2 clean sheets on the bounce, and they're looking really, really solid again.
Yeah, they really are. And even at the end, it all comes down to a big moment. And when you get big moments, you need big players. It was funny because I think if I heard it right, Arne Slot almost talked about how he expected him to maybe miss it after the game in his post-match conference. But I didn't doubt him. Big man for the big moment as ever was Mo Salah, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, he just steps up, doesn't he, in the crucial moments. It's like he kind of doesn't feel nerves at all. I mean, there was a bit of a discourse, wasn't it, recently about him taking him off penalties on the basis that he'd missed one in a friendly and then he didn't score in the Community Shield. But I thought that was absolutely crazy. He's one of the best penalty records of any player in Liverpool history. So keep them on him for me. And he showed why yesterday in dispatching that. And I know his form has not been the best at the start of the season, but again, kind of just point to the fact that people very, very quickly forget. I mean, this attack for me hasn't quite clicked yet, and they're all kind of just trying to work it out with a few new players involved. But immediately people want to suggest that 4 games into this new season, the Mo Salah who got 50-odd goals and assists last season is now completely finished as a player. And again, he's just going to make people look stupid. Can we not just relax a bit in sort of wanting to be the first to have the hot take on things? It's he's clearly not playing at his best. And I thought yesterday was a quiet one from him, but I thought what forward did play particularly well really in that situation. Yeah. It wasn't a game that was conducive to that. So I didn't think many of them played well. So yeah, but the important thing was he gets that chance at the end and he slots it just completely nervelessly and gets Liverpool the 3 points again. And he was involved in the Engamoa goal, wasn't he, at Newcastle? So he's happy, and he scores against Bournemouth to completely wrap it up. So if this is him playing poorly, he's having enough big moments to get Liverpool through. So maybe we should just calm down with the criticism a little, I think.
Yeah, maybe just eat your words time and time again. And you kind of alluded to it there, especially that people are looking at this in 2 ways, because it's easy to go 4 wins out of 4, 12 points, clear 2 clean sheets. Some stats are absolutely positive. You couldn't debate that at all. But it does all feel a bit disjointed, is probably the word I would use at the moment. Like there's a lack of fluency, and there's new players, of course, coming in, new style. All that goes into the mix. From what you've seen so far, what would you be looking at changing, or do you think Arne Slot will be looking at changing anything at all?
I just think there's not a lot he can change. Obviously, Isak will get involved at at some point, but there's not a lot he can change. It's just kind of feels to me that, they just need a little bit of time really to kind of to just find that fluency, to just work each other out, for Florian Wirtz to have a slightly better relationship with his teammates, for Hugo Ekitike to do the same, for Salah to work out how he fits into this new attack that is completely changed from last season, because I feel like he's not going to be the main focal point as much as he was last season. I don't feel like they're trying to put everything through him, so he's got to kind of pick his moments, and how does that work out? How does does Wirtz move in behind sometimes? How does he find Ekitike? I just don't think, like I say, that there's much to change outside of just time and training and matches. I'm certain it will click. I don't have any concerns about that. And I mean, they're scoring goals regardless, they're winning games regardless, they're doing enough. But there's clearly more to come as well. But I just think there's nothing better than time, really, and time on the training ground together to make that happen. So we just kind of wait for that at the moment, and hopefully it comes in the next game or the next game after that, and then Liverpool will have as many points as they've got behind them already, and then they're hitting the stride as well. That would be a real worry for everyone around them.
Yeah, fingers crossed it comes sooner rather than later. But 3 points, a perfect start on the surface. We will take it all day long. And we talk as ever about the off-the-field news and things coming up. I'll be honest, I wasn't really happy when you tweeted yesterday that Alexander Isak is not with the squad. But then Arne Slot gets interviewed and obviously says, very particularly, it's better to have him a full session rather than 5 or 10 minutes of playing. And people jump on that, don't you? He's ready to play at least 45 minutes. Seeing if we'll use that on Wednesday or Saturday. As much as we wanted to see him yesterday, it is the right call to manage him this way, isn't it?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Slot made a really good point as well about kind of Johan Wissa, who had been through a similar situation, being on strike at Brentford, then played 2 games for his country, and now he's out for 4 or 5 weeks, isn't he? So Liverpool definitely don't want that. You don't need to be kind of pushing him to situations where he gets injured. And as he says, yesterday he comes on for 10 minutes maybe at the end to try and win you the game. But, the alternative is he does an hour and a half's worth of training and real physical work to try and get him up to speed. That's surely more beneficial in the long term, isn't it? So, I think it was the right decision personally. And shame not to see him make a little cameo, but Slot seemed pretty keen to kind of get him in the squad on the midweek game in the Champions League, and of course Liverpool will have a bigger bench there, so he absolutely will be involved, I'd expect. That is exciting, and Liverpool won anyway, so the right decision in the end, I think, and very much still looking forward to seeing him, but wasn't to be yesterday.
True, and Arne Slot's answered more questions about him than we've actually seen him on the field, because I know you will have been part of this, but the embargo was all about Alexander Isak, wasn't it? And talked about him, we've got to build him in, that he isn't the best striker in the world at the moment because he's been out for 4 months, and was really keen to emphasise that. I'm almost jumping the timeline a little bit. When do you think we're going to actually start to see him regularly in the rotation?
I think, I don't know, there's 6 more games now before the international break. I kind of feel like I would be, I don't know really, because he kind of surprised me when he said like he might be ready for 45 minutes quite soon. So maybe do we see him get a start in the Southampton game, maybe, with it being a home game, there's no travel involved, you can just, you can maybe just start him for 45 minutes in that to get some fitness in him. And because my other feeling on it, aside from that League Cup game, is maybe we wouldn't see him start this side of the next international break, to be honest. But, just with Slot saying that, maybe kind of clouds things a little for me. So, I kind of lean on that side. And maybe if he does get a start, it'll be against Southampton, and they'll otherwise kind of ease him in. But then the aim will be the other side of the international break for him to basically start games going forward. So, that's how I feel about it. But we'll kind of see really with that one. It's an interesting one, and I really hope we get to see him on the pitch at least in the Atletico game. Not least because I think Liverpool might need him. I mean, we know how good they are defensively, and you need your top class players to disorganise that. So it's going to be a slow process, but I definitely think we we can say with some confidence, regardless of how this next few games pans out, he might start before then or whatever, but definitely the other side, the next international break, I think, is when he will be fully integrated and you won't have kind of fitness concerns around him, I'd say.
True. I mean, it's insane to say. I think it's 6 games in 16 days the Reds are about to embark on. So, yeah, we're going to see him at some point, definitely. And the other thing, I mean, he talked about his fitness, but actually there was another bit from the embargo I wanted to ask you about, because he almost gave us a maths equation, didn't he, on a slot, where he said sales and success equals spending. And that is, to be honest, because people are obviously jumping on, will this be a continuation? Are we expecting big money signings every window? It almost intimated that it's possible as long as we're successful, and sales are going to be key behind it as well, didn't he, the way he laid it out?
Yeah, this is it. I mean, this is why we could always kind of promise that this was going to be a big summer, because you knew there were going to be some big sales there to fund a lot of it. And obviously Liverpool had been successful. They kind of saved up the money as well. So that gave them this really big pot that they could dip into and make a lot of big purchases. So, he's absolutely right. It's not like this window has been completely, out of keeping with FSG's general approach. It's very much aligned with it, I guess. So, he's right on that front. What I would say is, I don't think the next couple of summers are going to be anywhere near like this one. I think they've done a lot of business for the long term, and now it'll just be a case of kind of, one in, one out, and kind of, do we need to make a tweak in this position? And someone else might feel like they want to move on to try and play more elsewhere or whatever, and then they'll need replacing. But I think that the core of a squad that's going to be together for the next, I'd say, 3 seasons at least, is very much in place now. So I don't think we'll see anything like the kind of outlay that we've seen this summer for a while now.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And we will talk about a few moves as well. But I suppose with the games coming thick and fast, and Atletico on Wednesday, which we'll get to, Curtis Jones, another injury this way. Like, do we know anything about it or how long? Because I know Arne Slot mentioned that, I don't, almost as a surprise that we wouldn't know, but there wasn't really many details given about how long, what it is, type of thing.
No, unfortunately not. No one kind of has to follow up in the open on that. And obviously I can't do that because I'm in the embargo. So we don't get to asking that around it. And then the embargo went down a different route, really. So it would have been out of place in there to ask, really. So we didn't, unfortunately, get more details. But of course, there's a press conference, isn't there, on Tuesday? So, hopefully get a bit of an update on that. In fact, there'll be open training as well. So we'll see, maybe he can be involved, and, hopefully. But we'll find out more about that tomorrow, no doubt. But hopefully not too long. He didn't make it sound like it was terrible, but it could be a couple of weeks or whatever. So I'm just speculating at the moment, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe the international break might have worked in our favour. We'll have to see on this. And I suppose the other interesting comments, and it was from his embargo, he was honest about it, wasn't he? Same with Mark Gaby. Use that word, ridiculous. About tonight, we were close to saying it. I think everyone knew what happened. He did it well. He kind of nicely navigated the question about would you go back in Jan and the end of the summer, which has been people's main topic. He dealt with that one quite well, didn't he?
Yeah, and we always try our best to kind of get him to give up something on transfers, but not managed to do it yet. I thought it was interesting. He was open about the fact that Liverpool were close. He didn't need to admit it, and he generally doesn't admit, even if it's a really obvious situation like that. But he was quite open about the fact that he really liked the player as well. So maybe that's kind of a little public message to Mark Gay as well, of kind of, hang in there, we're still coming for you. We still really appreciate you and wanted to sign you. So, that was kind of an interesting aspect. Obviously, in terms of what that means for whether he comes in January or whatever, not quite clear at the moment. And I know there've been those reports suggesting that there's no chance Liverpool will do that, but I don't think you could rule it out completely just yet. We'll see in terms of that.
And I suppose, and I know you've been speaking on other podcasts, which was a disgrace, but we'll pick that up at a later time, about Ibu Konate and that. And I think as people are naturally, this could just rumble on and on because of the nature of these type of contract situations. But it is all still, it's just open. Like, Konate and his agent are talking to Liverpool, clearly other clubs at the same time, as is their right, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. And there's like a desperation to kind of be the first to be miserable about it and say, "Oh, well, it's done," and he's clearly just going to go to Real Madrid now. But it's not done. So that's not. So if I say it's not done now on this podcast, and someone pulls it out and they'll say, "Oh, David Lynch is saying there's a chance that Canate still signs for Liverpool," and then people go, "Well, it's definitely going to sign for Liverpool." Then he's saying he's optimistic and that it's going to happen, and it's like, well, no, all the outcomes are on the table, and we can accept that. And you don't get points or any kind of kudos for being the first to say, just because you're a negative person, that, oh, it's done and he's definitely going to Real Madrid. Well, yeah, you might be right, and fair play to you if you guess correctly at this point that is going to be the outcome here. But genuinely, all outcomes are on the table at the moment. Canate is, as far as I'm aware, and this is sourced on both sides of the debate, it is still in some sort of talks with Liverpool. They're not at an agreement yet, but that it can happen. It could be happening right now as we talk now, that someone kind of compromises on what they want and the agreement gets done. So, these things, it's until it's done, and it's not like at the moment he has totally told Liverpool he's not going to sign and he's going to Real Madrid. That has 100% not happened. And I feel like if Liverpool gave him the right amount of money, that he would be happy to stay, but they're not that agreement, and he feels a little bit undervalued, and Liverpool feel like they've got a red line that they don't want to go over. And that's contract talks, by the way, because the same happened with Van Dijk and Salah, and they both got resolved in a positive way. All that talk about them having signed it months before and keeping it quiet was absolute nonsense. So those negotiations were going on till the last. So like I say, people might want to jump the gun and say it's done and say it's exactly like Trent situation, and then they will never mention again that they said that if it resolves its way in the way that Van Dijk and Salah's does. So everything's on the table at the moment, and I'd beware anyone making any kind of concrete pronouncements about it at this stage, or until it's done, which decisions might be made either way in the next couple of months, but we aren't there at this very moment as we speak.
Nah, we'll await developments. Feels a bit like Groundhog Day, doesn't it, from last summer, and see what comes. And I mean, I've got a little cursor there over the main man and Arne Slot, and I'd really planned to ask you about this, but it's naturally things that are starting to just have seen it creep in this morning. It's easy to forget that people in the last 2 years of their contract, Arne Slot, Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, those will be priority for the top level. As much as we talk about players, they will be right up there for FSG to sort, won't they?
Yeah, 100%. I'd be amazed if Slot doesn't have a contract offer on his desk between now and the end of the season, and the same for all the kind of hierarchy above him as well, in terms of Edwards and Hughes, as you suggest. Obviously 3-year contracts to start with, but it's been such a success, I think, the last period that they've been in charge of things, both on the transfers front, in and out, and obviously what's going on the field that Arne Slot is overseeing, that it would be absolute madness. So I think you say with confidence, really, that contract offers will be made before the end of the season. And hopefully they're all happy to sign them, because they're all doing fantastic jobs.
Yeah, if we can keep it as is, that is all we are looking for. We'll see if anything develops that way. And I mean, the games are now starting thick and fast. I mean, Atletico are up. It is the first Champions League game. I mean, we'll talk about them a little bit, because they are currently 11th in La Liga early doors. But I suppose Champions League, as we say here right now, some have got Liverpool as favourites. Do you think they've got a real chance of a double glory this season?
Yeah, I'm surprised kind of that PSG aren't being put as favourites, because they're really, really good, and I don't think like they've lost anything that made them champions last season, and they were unbelievable when Liverpool came up against them. So I'm kind of a little bit surprised about that, and particularly because Liverpool they've made some good changes, but we don't know how it's all going to pan out and who's going to fit in, and whether they can be as available as the forwards were last season, for example. So there's some ifs around Liverpool that I would say I would put PSG ahead of them, but obviously Liverpool should be up there. I think the only team that could have beaten them to it last season was PSG, and unfortunately got them at the point they did. So I think Liverpool are right up there, and they've got a very, very good chance of going for this tournament this season. But they could probably do with PSG getting knocked out a little earlier, that which they almost did last season. If that could happen again, that would be great.
Yeah, probably proves that finishing top of the whole thing isn't as prestigious as people made it out to be. And I mean, this game, Atletico, because it's a big team. They were in pot one, Diego Simeone, and everyone will have their memories of that season where Adrian just acted like a hologram and they stole it late at Anfield from what could have been. But when you look at it, they are 11th in La Liga. They've only won one of their first games, scored 5, shipped 4 for someone, a team that's notoriously hard to break down. It doesn't quite feel like, and you've looked at the way they've developed in the last few years, it doesn't feel like the Simeone Athletic powerhouse of old somewhat, does it?
No, but I'm always wary of saying that before they turn up and put on a defensive masterclass. I mean, the problem is kind of those fundamentals will always be there. So in a big game like that, Anfield away, where they know what the job is, you just worry that they'll come and they'll just make it horrible. They'll do what Burnley did, and Burnley had success in doing, which is just complete numbers behind the ball. And if they came out with a 0-0 from Anfield, they'd be absolutely delighted with it. So. In being in bad form almost makes their job easier, and that nobody's expecting them to turn up and play some champagne football. So, it just makes their job right. We'll just turn up and ruin the game. So, I'm always wary of kind of writing them off or thinking this is going to be straightforward. But of course, if they're lacking in a little bit of confidence, that's helpful. And Liverpool have definitely got the firepower, and they'll have the atmosphere behind them as well. So, it's nice to kick off with a really big game as well, isn't it? So I'm really looking forward to this one. Really good test, and yeah, hopefully Liverpool, because they're at home, because Atletico are maybe not the best and they're not the confident best, maybe can be a chance for Liverpool to make a good start. And then if they do that, they'll get a big game out of the way, and with 3 points under the belt, you'd be very confident that they'll get through again.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It would be amazing if it worked out that way. And I suppose things that work out certain ways. This came out from Chris Bascom and a few others, didn't it? Going back to 2024. Julian Alvarez, who was a Manchester City player then, is currently an Atletico player, but it doesn't. Well, there's even suggestion he might not be fit. We'll have to see, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I mean, I'd have loved him in the summer. I'm not going to pretend for one single second, but the door feels short on this move now, doesn't it?
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, to be honest, I've no regrets on this one in terms of that Liverpool got Isak over the line. I mean, he's just as good a player, if not better, really. So, I think Alvarez would have been a fantastic alternative and a really good fit for Liverpool if they'd have been able to sign him this summer or even the summer before when that was mooted. So no doubts over his quality. And yeah, like you say, hopefully he does miss the game because he's very, very good. But yeah, no regrets either over what Liverpool have got, because you think in that kind of deeper role, which he can play as a second striker, they've got Florian Wirtz, who, I just don't doubt it's going to be a big success for Liverpool. And then in the centre forward role, Alexander Isak. So not looking at him too enviously at the moment, given what Liverpool eventually did do in the market.
Yeah, I wouldn't, as much as I would have loved him, I wouldn't mind him missing this one. We'll see if he's available, probably get a bit more tomorrow. And I suppose in terms of Atletico, you mentioned how the game will feel. It does. You're ready for the 4-5-1. You're ready for the deep block. We've got to be honest as well, because it is Europe. We're ready to use the words dark arts when we review this game, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, they'll be diving and kind of little injuries and slowing the game down and doing everything they can to make it difficult for Liverpool. And Liverpool have just got to rise above it. I mean, it's actually handy, and I said this in my video review of the game yesterday, that it's quite handy, isn't it, that Liverpool have had the preparation of playing Burnley yesterday. And I know Burnley are not Atletico Madrid, but in terms of approach and what they're going to do to make it difficult and what you have to do to get through that kind of block, they've had a perfect kind of warm-up match for that. So hopefully that kind of sharpens minds, and having someone like Isak maybe off the bench as well to maybe nick you a goal late on if Atletico do succeed in keeping it tight, that's really handy. Plus, doing things at home is always easier as well. So I'm sure the fans will be kind of sucking the ball into the net as part of that. So yeah, it's going to be tough. It can, they can make it difficult for you if they're on song, but hopefully they're not. And hopefully Liverpool, even if they are playing well at Atletico, have the answers and have learned something from that Burnley game.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because you can feel the way this one's going to turn out. And I suppose you mentioned Isak. People will be looking at that. They'll be thinking about McAllister's ankle. We're waiting on Curtis Jones. It is probably the first week we're going into 3 in a week, let's call it that. So rotation's going to come into the mix. Who do you think maybe it's easy to say because it's been a settled side so far, who might be moved or rotated for this one, do you reckon?
I think we're going to see change at right back. I do think we're going to see one of the two come in, whether that is Frimpong or Bradley. I mean, that is an absolutely fascinating debate, and I really don't know which side to come down on that. I thought Bradley was excellent yesterday. But of course, Frimpong with a couple more days of training and having made an appearance, is he fit enough now to jump ahead of him? And, the McAllister thing, how fit is he? What's that ankle looking like today? Is it swollen? But I don't think it's going to be kind of sweeping changes. I'd say that. I think there's a debate there on McAllister in midfield, Szoboszlai coming out from right back and possibly coming into midfield, and how you kind of work that one out. But I think, forward line will probably stay the same. I think we'll probably see Kirkes restored now and hopefully have a better game, and centre-half partnership picks itself, goalkeeper does. So not sweeping changes, as I say. It's going to probably be settled, but there's a couple of areas of the team there that are right up for debate, and just fascinating to see how the manager approaches it, really.
Yeah, we might get a bit more of a clue, I suppose, on Tuesday, but maybe not. We'll see which players up at the same time. And I suppose with this, because we know Isak, we've been told 45 most likely Saturday or this Wednesday coming. If the game's going how Liverpool want, do you think he'll want to keep his 45 minutes for the derby?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know whether he kind of think, well, if I can get him 15 minutes here and then I can get him 15 minutes against Everton, then he's ready to start the other side, or half an hour against Everton, sorry. And then he's ready to start. I mean, these are, you kind of, I think the beauty of this really will be, can you get him 15 minutes against Atletico? And then if you do give yourself scope then to give him half an hour against Everton, you might well need it because they're playing quite well. They look tough to score against as well. Derby's a tough typically anyway. So having Isak up your sleeve for a good half an hour in that game would be massive, wouldn't it? So, maybe that's the approach, and maybe you don't want to rely too much on what Isak can do for you against Atleti, but if you can rely on him a little bit more for the derby, then absolutely perfect. So, again, that's another one really, really interesting thing in terms of how the medical staff allow him to approach it, what the manager is thinking about it. There's a few of these that have got to work themselves out as the season progresses, and so much for us to learn and see what the manager's thinking is like. So, and that's probably a key one, really.
Yeah, it's hard to say how many will be made. We'll probably have to wait till Wednesday to find this out. And I suppose the final thing I'll come to with this one, because it will be a late one Wednesday night. The weather has turned. You mentioned the wind at Burnley as well. Chance of the knee warmers being in place for Wednesday night, do you reckon?
Maybe. Honestly, it was absolutely freezing yesterday. And I know Turf Moor is cold anyway, no matter what time of year. But I think, I wonder whether it will be knee warmers straight in, which you shouldn't be doing for the first Champions League game. But it's it's really turning at the moment, isn't it? It's pretty horrible out there. So, just another 8 months of this to enjoy.
Yeah, it will fly by. And we should try and end it on a positive. As much as they will be a difficult team, it will be probably a case of breaking them down. Still think the Reds get the 3 points in this one.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I think home advantage is massive in these, and they know how big a game this is. So, and as you say, Atleti not in the best of form. So, I just think Liverpool have got a better team now. The fluency's not quite there as much as we'd like it, but I just fancy him in a home game against anyone really. So hopefully the atmosphere gets them over the line, and hopefully we just see, with another game under the belts, see that attack click a bit more, and they can kind of cut through Atletico, and then that would give them plenty of confidence then going forward.
Yeah, hopefully we've got plenty of confidence to take into the Champions League, and then there's just a small matter of a derby. Well, we're back this week to review Atletico and set up for that one as well. All it leaves me to say as ever is, for the time, the insight, and for answering all the questions, David, it is massively appreciated.
Thank you.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.